Right, David. So you're at the end of part one. You've just got your job in the Mirror. So you're a newsboy. Were you a newsboy straight away?
Yes, I was. Yeah, it was
So,
Charlie's job that came up. Yeah.
right. So what would what would a general day be like for you? What would your duties be?
Yeah, I mean that's one of the best things about it is that there's no general day. I suppose as someone who always got bored quite quickly, then I think that it's a great advantage to have a job that is varied. And so, of course, on a Wednesday for Thursday, you're doing tips for every race for the next day, including a dreaded nap and next best, and copy for the following day, which can vary in size according to what space. If there's a big football match or something, then you'll be probably restricted. If not, then you'll get space in the paper. You can always put stuff online. Obviously, the recent purchase of the Star and the Express by what was Trinity Mirror and is now Reach PLC means that there'll be days when you're not doing tips for all three papers, but doing copy for all three. So that would be a normal day. You'll get the decks at 11:15 and then just work through them. You have to prioritise because obviously if you've got, I think I worked it out, if you've got, say there are 300 runners, which is by no means unusual on a race card or in the paper the next day, that's 5 hours of 1 minute per horse, isn't it? 'Cause it's 300 minutes. So if you start at 20 past 11 and you file your tips at say 5 o'clock, it's just over a minute per horse, which obviously isn't an awful lot. So you have to sort of prioritise certain races and stuff like that. And then of course Friday is a busy day because it's the pull out on Saturday. We used to be 12 at the Mirror, we're 8 now, and I'd love us to go back to 12 because I think that in those days it was a really good read of maybe a feature, a steaming where I would rant about something that had happened that week, and we also had some good columnists. We had Frankie, we had Andrew Balding, Dickie Johnson, Evan Williams, who were all very good to work with and came up with a lot of good content as well. I hate that word, content, editorial. And then of course you've got the big meetings where something like Cheltenham, that we have a 24-page pull-out plus an 8 on the first day. So that's a long time in the making. We probably have an editorial meeting at the end of January, probably third week in January, and discuss the ideas and features that are going to go into that. Work towards that. Obviously, those big days are very hard work, but amazing to be at. So that's roughly it really for the Mirror. There are quieter days. It can be feast or famine. There are days when it's lower grade racing and there isn't much space in the paper, and you think, well, that was a quiet day. And then there are others where at Cheltenham you can get in at 9 in the morning, leave at 8, and literally not have time for a piss during that 11 hours, which is hard going, but there's no way you'd want to be anywhere else.
Now, the newspapers are normally aligned to political parties, and the Mirror is well known as being a Labour.
Yeah.
Does that stretch to the sports desk as well?
No, it doesn't. I mean, I'm a Labour voter, and I'm a Labour Party member, but if someone at the Mail offered me a job, and they won't because Captain Heath and Sam Turner are doing an excellent job there, I thought I'd put that in, or the Sun, I would take that because you're the racing correspondent, not the political correspondent. Let's face it, even in the glory days of newspapers, there were only 3 left-leaning papers: the Independent, the Mirror and the Guardian. All the others, the Murdoch papers, Northcliffe House, they're all right of centre, aren't they? And in some ways quite a long way right of centre. So that's people say that on Twitter, like, again, we'll discuss what a monster Twitter is, but people say I could never work for a paper like that, and you think, well, I'll tell you what, mate, you could do if the salary was good and you had to pay a mortgage and there were no other jobs going. I think that's a view of people who don't have to work for a living, frankly. I think that they probably see it as some luxury.
It always used to make me laugh when Caton of the Morning Star was always bottom of the naps table, whether that was on purpose.
I know what that's like.
So what do so you've been there for a while now, what do you attribute to a long-standing racing correspondent? What do you need to survive? Because you're an endangered species, aren't you?
Well, that's a sort of question in two parts, I think. I think that, well, obviously, in terms of, you have to have a good relationship with your desk, for one thing, because the times when you can't tip a winner to save your life, and I've had as many of those times, I think, as most people. You need someone inside who's like, it's all right, mate. I know that we're on something of a losing spell, but don't worry about it. Just so you need a good relationship with your desk. You need to be pretty consistent. I think that the old days of like journalism being a boozing trade, they're not completely finished, but I mean, even when I was a capacious drinker in my 20s and 30s, I wasn't a lunchtime drinker, because if I had a half, I would fall asleep in the afternoon. So I think those days are gone, really. You have to be quite sort of scrupulous and conscientious. I've never stitched anyone up in my life, or certainly not in my career anyway. I've known lots of things that I've not been able to write about because it would have betrayed a confidence. In many ways, that probably would have been a good thing career-wise to do, but it's not a fair thing to do. So that's, I think those are the main things, really. Obviously, I like writing. I like the journalistic side. I like writing news stories, and I like writing comment pieces about horse racing. I like that more than tipping on a Tuesday for Wednesday. I don't think there's any great secret about that. I like doing stuff like Luck on Sunday, where you talk about racing politics, and those times when you do get a sniff of a decent story are also really exciting times. To me, that gives me more satisfaction, really, than maybe tipping the winner of a big handicap or something, because essentially, if a horse wins a big handicap, he's one of about 5 or 6 plausible horses, and you happen to have sort of got the right one. So there's that, and with it being a shrinking industry, I don't really know what can be done about that. There are lots of better business brains than I've got who sort of seem to have applied. Obviously, with some papers have paywalls. The internet is a growing industry for all papers. Obviously, I suppose the Mail and the Guardian got there first, and the others are sort of catching up, really. But yeah, I hope it can enjoy. I love newspapers. I think the great thing about newspapers is that is the space restrictions, in that something's got to be important to get in. You never ring, and this isn't a slight at the Mirror desk, it's anyone I've ever worked for. You never ring an internet desk and say, do you want me to do something, and receive the reply, no, don't worry. They always say, like, if you said, I've got a story about next door's cat getting stuck up a tree, they'll say, yeah, go on then, give us 500 words. And even though if you rang the news desk of the paper and you said, I've got this story about next door's cat getting stuck up a tree, they'd say, mate, someone's just shot Boris Johnson dead. We haven't got room for that. I know that's wishful thinking, but we haven't got room for that. Do you know what I mean? And I love that. I love the fact that in newspapers a story has to be of a certain importance or have a certain resonance with readers in order to get in. Otherwise, it doesn't. And I think it's a terrible shame. I look at the feed of different papers on Twitter about someone getting their car stuck in Morrison's car park, and I think, who the bloody hell is interested in reading that? That's just, if someone in the pub told me that story, I'd go to the bog and just sort of try and get away from them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just what's the point? And that's one thing that the internet and that Twitter and social media have done, is that sort of that we're supposed to be interested in things that 30 years ago we wouldn't have given a monkey's about.
Right, we talked about Twitter. You've mentioned it several times. So we'll go on to it now, because in reality, legally, anybody can publish their own work now. So on Twitter, so many characters, they can publish whatever they want to say.
Yeah.
Now, you've got opinions about Twitter by the sound of it.
No, I think that there are some aspects of Twitter that are very, very good. You know, I'm on it. I enjoy it. I use it pretty much for my own amusement. I don't use it to curry favours with favour with trainers or jockeys. My handle at the Bedford Fox very rarely appears in the Daily Mirror, because they've said to me, Dave, you don't tweet about horse racing, you tweet about ordinary life or something that's on the telly, or, you know, the late Linda Bellingham when she was still with us. And, you know, sort of, I think that there are, you know, it's a great way of disseminating information. For a journalist, it's absolutely brilliant, because you know that you can be off your game during a day for whatever reason it might be. There might be problems with your family, or you might have had too many the night before, or you just might not feel very bright. And in the old days, you know, Claude Duval's world exclusive Gold Cup favourite out of race, or probably more likely Colin McKenzie actually, but now you don't miss that, because it's there. So it's a great thing in many ways. I'm sure you think positively of it in the same way that I do, in that way. But it's also made us much more angry, much more aggressive. It's shut down debate, and I'm ashamed to say that I think a lot of that has come from the left. That deplatforming, I think, is an appalling thing. If someone's saying something that is legal and within the boundaries of law and free speech, I think they should be allowed to say that, and we should draw our own conclusions from what they say. You know, I don't deny Nigel Farage to say what he says. I'm sorry he survived that plane crash. But, you know, at the same time, he's got a legal right to say the filth that he says. Now, so in that sense, it's made us more aggressive. It's made us ruder. People hide behind pseudonyms of Pro Punter 74. You know, I don't have a very high profile, but even I get, like, you know, shit from people. God knows what, you know, people on race who are full-time racing TV, you know, telly people and sports people and politicians. God knows what they have to put up with. And the thing is, it's done by people who wouldn't say that to your face. One time in my entire career did a guy call me a tosser to my face, and that was at Southall about 15 years ago. I walked past him, he said, "Tosser." And I thought, I was feeling quite low at the time, and I thought, you know what, I could really have done without that. But I thought, on reflection, at least you said it to my face, mate. You didn't say, you know, Pro Punter 74 or whoever it is. And I think that, you know, in that sense, there was a thing last week where David Mitchell, not my late Mirror colleague, but the comedian who did Peep Show, he said that he thought that the internet had done more harm than nuclear weapons had done in the last sort of 20 years. Obviously, the scope for nuclear weapons to do a lot of harm is great. But I really agreed with what he said. You know, I think that, and also the other thing with Twitter is that the voice of a very small number of people is very loud, and I think that's some, you know, lots of people I've worked with they place great store by what people on Twitter say, and I think, well, it's just a small number of people shouting very loudly and in some ways very offensively, so leave it out.